So, I have talked about the Wii series games, I have covered Nintendo Switch Sports, so our next logical step This right here is Nintendo Land, and it's hands down the best multiplayer game on the Wii U. So let me tell you why this is such an underrated gem of a game. I've talked a bunch of times about the Wii U because I simply love this console to death, and one of the best games you can find on there is Nintendo Land. And this came bundled with the system, like Wii Sports, and it's clear that Nintendo wanted to take some inspiration from Wii Sports. Since Wii Sports was a must-have game that appeals to virtually everyone, it sold 80 million copies and became one of the best-selling games of all time. For a small minigame collection that was sorely made to be sold together with the Wii, that's insane. When Nintendo was making the Wii U, they of course wanted a similar game that would sell like hotcakes, so they coupled together Nintendo Land. They started development of this game shortly after Wii Sports Resort was released in 2009, when the Wii U wasn't finalized yet. Thus, Nintendo experimented with a lot of different prototypes, and the goal of this game was, like Wii Sports, to show what the new console could do. The problem was that they had a couple different games in mind that were totally unrelated to each other, and they fixed the problem by making a theme park and make the games little attractions and design it all around different Nintendo franchises. And so out came Nintendo Land alongside with the Wii U. It released at November 12, 2012 in North America, November 30th, 2012 in Europe, and December 8th, 2012 in Japan. When the game was released, it was praised for its awesome atmosphere, theming, and showing what things you could do with the new hardware and the Wii U gamepad. And I can totally agree with that. So, welcome to Nintendo Land. A Nintendo theme park. It's funny that the game released in 2012 and 9 years later, Nintendo would open their own real-life theme park named Super Nintendo World. But if the game was praised for how good it was, why did it only sell 5.24 million copies? Well, this seems obvious by now, but it's because the Wii U was such a massive failure. It itself didn't even sell more than 50 million consoles, and I have already extensively talked about why this is at its 10th anniversary last year. So it didn't do so hot, but it was one of the best selling games in the Wii U, being only beaten by Mario Kart 8, Super Mario 3D World, New Super Mario Bros. U, and Super Smash Bros. For Wii U. So the low sales are purely because of the Wii U itself. Now let's get into the game and look at what Nintendo has been working on between 2009 and 2012. So we started the game and we are greeted by this little robot named Monita, which guides us through this Nintendo theme park. And since it's a Nintendo themed minigame collection, of course we gotta go through all the minigames. So the package has minigames split up in different groups, and the first one is the team attractions, and these are minigames where you work together with your friends to achieve a set goal. These minigames are, of course, themed after The Legend of Zelda, and heavily themed around the back then newly released Skyward Sword. You make your way through hordes of enemies, which can be done with up to 5 players. The up to 4 players on the TV use a sword, and the gamepad player walks in the back with a bow and arrow, and can shoot some enemies that the TV players cannot reach. It's really fun to exchange the gamepad through the room to swap out your playstyle. It's really easy as well. After every level the game asks you who will use the gamepad, so it's obvious that it was designed to be played like this, which applies to basically all multiplayer games in this package. This game is one of the best games in the packages as well. Plus, you can shoot your friends. Based off the Metroid series, this one is a little more complicated than Battle Quest. Since in Battle Quest you basically move automatically, so all you had to do was swing your sword at the right time or shoot all enemies to move forward. Well, this minigame is basically a whole third-person shooter with up to 4 players having full control on the ground on a TV, and the Wii U gamepad implementation has to be one of the best of all times. You control a freaking gunship. Hell, yes, this is what I want from the Wii U gamepad implementation, just flying around in Samus's gunship. I mean, technically Star Fox Zero did have the same, but we don't talk about that, okay? Because that game was just sorta overall a really fun attraction. Pretty obvious which series this is from. The person controlling the gamepad uses it to command the tiny Pikmin, and the players on the TV play as a bigger Pikmin. You work together through waves of enemies with a boss fight at the end of every stage. This one isn't as fleshed out as the other ones, and I found this one particularly less fun than the other modes, but it's still a good mode overall. Then there are the competitive attractions. These are all the attractions that are played against the gamepad player. These include... It's honestly one of my favorite attractions to play with friends. Based off the Mario series, of course, the gamepad player plays as Mario and the TV players play as Toads, with the objective to catch Mario, and Mario has to escape for a total of 2 minutes to win. If you play with 2 players, however, the Toad gets an additional 2 Yoshis to warn the Toad whenever they see Mario. But I find it to be more fun with more than 3 players, so if you ever play this game, be sure to have at least 2 friends to play this one with for the full experience. Really similar to Mario Chase, but this time based off the Luigi's Mansion series. Here the TV players need to hunt down the gamepad player dressed as a ghost, who can also make the TV players faint. So basically the gamepad players and the TV players are hunting each other. The gamepad player is invisible on the TV, however, but the game makes it easier through the rumble of the controller, letting you know how close the ghost is. Essentially, you can turn off the rumble to make it harder for the TV players. But there are some instances like thunder or dashing that can make the player visible on screen for a short while. It's a really fun attraction, but I definitely recommend, like Mario Chase, to play this one with more than 3 players. And then there is Animal Crossing Sweet Day. In Animal Crossing Sweet Day, based off, again, pretty obvious, the player on the gamepad controls 2 guards with the right and left stick to get the TV players playing as animals who will try to collect candies. The thing is that the candies make the players slower, which means that sometimes sacrifices have to be made. This one is so unique because basically both sides of the controller are 2 different characters, which is really fun, and sometimes it makes it really easy to miss something since your attention is basically split in half. It's really fun with friends, and it's a shame something like this isn't ported to the Switch yet, since this could basically be played on 4 different Switches. Honestly, most of these games could be ported to the Switch with a little bit of change, but I know for a fact that Nintendo isn't quick to press the Make Nintendo Land Remake button. Okay, but we're getting a bit off track here, since there are still 6 more minigames to cover in the selection of solo attractions, which are solo attractions, so based off of the fairly unknown game The Mysterious Marasame Castle, exclusive to the Famicom Disk System. Yes, all these franchises, and you choose this one? But okay, in this game you use the gamepad's touchscreen to shoot paper shuriken. I thought that was one of Ryu's moves in Smash, but you use these to shoot waves of ninjas. You tilt the controller to aim on the TV, and I know for a fact you can't replicate this one on the Switch. It's so unique and pretty fun. I find that the tilting after sometimes becomes a bit off, but hey, it's still really fun besides that. You use this trolley based off of, can you guess it? You traverse different obstacles by tilting the controller, and in addition, in some places, you have to use the left and right stick, the L and R buttons, and even the microphone. It's a fun little attraction to play a couple of times. It's really easy to mess up though, but that's what makes it fun, but can also become a little bit frustrating at times. In this one, you also tilt the gamepad, but now you hold it sideways. You race down a road with obstacles in high speed, and the goal is to reach the end as fast as possible. Yeah, Nintendo's excuse for not making an F-Zero game for years is this little attraction, but it captures the feeling of F-Zero really well, and is a blast to play, and sometimes your Mii can look derpy as hell, and I love it. Based off the Balloon Trip game on NES. Here you don't control the character, instead you control the wind through the gamepad's touchscreen. A pretty fun one, all things considered, but it's sort of lame how the gamepad is just a viewed-in image of the TV, so there's not much reason to look down there. You collect balloons in the air for points, and by landing, which will offer bonus points depending on where you land. It's fine, not one I'm pumping to play whenever I boot up this game though, but yeah, it's acceptable. Again, take a shot in the dark. You draw a route on the Wii U's gamepad to collect fruits, which are only visible on the TV, so you have to use the background to judge where you have to draw the line and where the fruits are in relation to each other. When you don't collect all the fruits, you lose a life and you have 3 hearts to keep going. There are also check marks you sometimes get, which you can place with the gamepad and you can also see on the TV to help you a bit out. This one is really enjoyable and definitely one of my favorite solo attractions. Based off of the Game & Watch series, you have to replicate the moves of the instructor on screen by using the sticks and the gyro controls. The front view is on the TV and the back view is on the gamepad. Occasionally though, the instructor will turn you around to face the other side, so you have to switch between looking at the TV and gamepad. Pretty lame implementation, but still a pretty fun one nonetheless. In these games you can also collect coins, which can be used in a pachinko machine to get collectibles from each game at the plaza, and even some music selections. Besides this, there is also the mode of Attraction Tour, and it's a more competitive game in which you face off in any of the attractions against other people. And it is actually really fun. In each round, a player gets a few cards to choose with a minigame and someone who they will be challenging. These can also be single player minigames in which you have to get a higher score than the other person. Of course, it being themed around different Nintendo IPs, it more so appealed to Nintendo fans opposed to Wii Sports, which went with sports, to which everyone is going to say, oh yeah, I know what sports are. How am I going to explain to my grandma what the f*** a Nintendo is? Whatever though, because for a Nintendo fan this is simply an awesome collection of Nintendo franchises. So the conclusion is that this little package right here was more so a niche for longtime Nintendo fans, but really a flop for casual consumers, alongside the Wii U not doing so hot. But still, I really like this game. Almost all games are amazing to bust out at parties, and they are pretty easy to understand. Like, I think even my grandma could play some of these games. Not sure if she would understand what a Marasame castle is, but that's just the theming, and that's kind of besides the point. But either way, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.